Have you ever wanted to own a GoXLR or a Stream Deck, but haven't been able to scrape enough money together to pick up both? Well, I'm in the same boat as you. But see this guy right here? I was able to get it on the cheap and configure it to pretty much do exactly what both of them do, combined into one. If you stick with me for a bit, I'll show you how I did it and how you can too. The first thing you're going to need to do is download something called Voicemeeter. There are 3 versions. The one I use is Voicemeeter Potato. The reason I use it is because, and as you'll see later on, you have a lot more control over what gets input and what gets output into the software and into whatever recording program or streaming software that you use. Once you have Voicemeeter downloaded and installed, you should be seeing a screen that looks something a little bit like this. This is the way I have mine configured, and I'm going to just show you a little bit of how I use my my Stream Deck to configure it. So normal use, you could just take your mouse and move everything up and down like so. But nice thing about this is after you configure it nicely, as you can see, I can use all my faders to move pretty much anything I want. I have certain buttons up here set up so that, say I wanted to mute my Spotify channel, all I really have to do is click it and it's muted. You can see the mute button. Where is it? There it is there. And I actually have the lights configured, so if it's muted, I could see an indication on the deck itself that it is muted, so I'll turn it back on. You could set it up to play sound effects. You could set it up to fade out channels and fade in channels. You can set it to mute all. You can set it to, I have a button on here that's kind of sets up my board for streaming. So it kind of pushes all the different levels on the screen to whatever default that I set. And you can do, I also use this to kind of fade out when my stream is done and whatnot. You can use this to pretty much do anything that you can think of, as long as you sit down and put just a little bit of time and effort into it. One thing that I do need to make mention is that once you do have Voicemeeter installed, that you go to your menu setting and you make sure that macro buttons is always running, set to run on start. You'll need this for the next step. It's where we put in our code for each button and how we are going to configure our hardware to interact with our software. Once you have that completed, the next time you open up Voicemeeter, you'll be greeted by this macro board. And as you can see, I have mine set up. I don't have it set up the way that I want to. I'm still adding things in as I go and testing as I go. But right now I have some basic things. So you can see in the top row, I'm changing whether or not I route the different channels that I have set up to my headphones. And then the second row is routing the audio from the channel to my studio monitors. And then the third row is just muting. And the fourth row is actually, this is just me playing around with it. One thing I did forget to mention is that you can also open up applications, just like the Stream Deck can be made to. So right now I have Photoshop being able to be opened with it. I'm not going to hit the button because that would, start the whole bloody process. But again, sky's the limit. So let's jump into how to configure each of these buttons. We'll do a fresh one and we'll give it a test. Now that we have Voicemeeter and our macro button programs open, what we're going to do is just choose a blank button. I'm going to choose this one down here because we'll configure my Spotify channel, my music channel. So all you have to do is hover over the button and give it a right click, and it opens up this dialog box. Now, button name is fairly simplistic. It's just the name you want it to display. So I'm just going to call it for now test button. The sub name doesn't really matter. It's if you wanted to give it some context. For example, I have like root mic, and then it's A1 on off. It's whatever helps you. The second part is the button type. Now there are 2. Push button is if you have one thing you want the button to do and only one thing. So if you hit it and it plays a sound effect and that's it. For this instance, we want 2 positions. So when you hit it, it executes a piece of code, in our case, this is going to be mute. And when you push it again, it's going to unmute. So it has 2 different pieces of code depending on which state the button is. The next part here is where we actually start a bit of our code. But one thing to note is that in Voicemeeter, they denote each input channel as strips. Your output channels over here are buses, but we won't be dealing with that in this tutorial. But your input channels are strips. You have 5 inputs, in my case, and 3 virtual ones. Now, we're not going to use my microphone channel because I don't want my microphone audio to be modified. So we're going to use my music channel, Spotify. So it doesn't really matter that there's no music playing because we'll be able to see through here what we're doing is actually happening, whatnot. So in most coding languages, you don't start at 1, you start at 0. So this actually isn't strip 1, this is strip 0, this is strip 1, this is strip 2, this is strip 3, and so on. So for our Spotify channel, when the macro buttons program opens up, we are going to make sure that it is unmuted. So strip 1, not 2, it's 1, strip 1 dot mute equals, now it's not on, off, or true or false. It's actually 1 or 0, 1 being on, 0 being off. So we want it to be unmuted, so off. And then we copy that, make that 0. Now, this particular section here is for when we actually push the button the first time. So when we push it the first time, we want our Spotify channel, in my case, to be muted. And then when we push it again, we want it to be unmuted. So let's just test this and see if it works. So I'm going to hit OK. And we have our button here. Now I'm going to click on, I'm not going to use the hardware piece right now because I didn't assign a key to it yet. But I'm going to click it. And there we go. So you see over here that it is being muted and unmuted. Perfect. So let's right click back in, and to assign a button on a MIDI controller, this is really, really nice, just click this learn button here. It allows you kind of to assign a hotkey. And I'm going to choose on my board this is the second row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. So right there, and then you'll see it is on my board key 25. So I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to, my mouse is over here, you're not going to see it there, and I'm just going to hit that key, and you'll see that it is muting the Spotify channel, and you can see on the macro program that it is actually lighting down. Now at this point you might be thinking, wow, I can mute and unmute. I can do that with a hotkey on my keyboard. But the nice thing with this is, and why it kind of resembles a Stream Deck or the GoXLR, is that you can set the different lights on here. Now, unfortunately, every single board is going to be different. So depending on which one you choose, you're going to have to look through the manual and look for the button codes for the light states and what the mapping actually is. Sometimes it can be difficult to find. There are hex finders out there. Thankfully, I didn't need to use one. I found a picture online that somebody, which I'll throw it up here in a second, somebody was nice enough to actually map for this particular board. And so I was able to use that. So let's jump in and I'll show you how to add a color change to that actually button. One thing I definitely don't want to skip over is that even though we are predominantly focusing on the macro buttons here, Voicemeeter itself, its core software actually has a way to map the MIDI keys themselves for the functions on the inside. So for example, if I wanted to do my fader for my Spotify channel, now it has it labeled as strip 2, and it's unfortunate because when we use the code, it's actually strip 1. But strip 2 in this case is here. Don't ask me why they did that. I already have mine set up, but all you have to do is you click learn for where that is, and then you just move the fader itself, and then it assigns it. So if I can clear it here, there we go, clear it. So if I click on learn, and then I move the fader again, it automatically assigns it. And you can see now, I should probably close that. And yep, fader still works there. Booyah. Okay, so the mute button is functioning properly when we press our button, which it is there. Yep. So what we want to do now is assign our color to it. Now, I will show you what I have set for my root mic one, which goes green when it's is rooted to my headphones and red when it's not. And we're most particularly interested in this particular line here. Now, I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to bring it over to our test button. and I'm going to throw it in just for now our on-off states. So I'm just going to paste it in and I'll go over it. Now, thankfully, this first section, the System.SendMidi, is actually in the manual for Voicemeeter. However, the rest of the data in here, specifically the numbers, are the relation to the actual board itself. Now, that's something that, again, I mentioned before, you're going to have to research and look for it in your software manuals, or again, find a hex finder program to run. So when you push the button, it'll actually spit out what the hex values are. So in my case, all I need to write for mine is System.SendMidi, and then out1 is our. Actually, I should mention that. Just in case you happen to want to run two MIDI controllers. If you go up to your, if you just close that. If you go up to our macro button here, and you'll see MIDI out 1 device and MIDI out 2 device. Now, I have, well, actually, I don't know why there's 2 showing, but there is. The one I'm currently using is the APC Mini, so that's my out 1. So that's why it's referenced in that line of code. Let's go back in. So I'll repaste it, because I didn't save it before. And so out 1 is referencing which piece of hardware you're sending this code to. And the next part is data. Now, I believe there are 2 states for mine, but data is the one that I want for color, because that's what I'm sending. And the next is the code that the hardware needs to enable to interpret what you're trying to send. So in my particular case, 90 is for an on state, and 38 is the big one. Now, the odd thing is, for my manual, or for my piece of hardware here, the manual for it said that this key should be, and as you can see it down here, 25. Now, when I press it, when I mapped it, it was mapped to key 25. However, when I'm sending the data to it, I can't use the mapping number. I have to use the hex number, or hex. Well, whatever it is. In any case, this is why this can be so problematic. So from the picture that I linked before briefly in the video, this actually gives me the correct number I need to send data to my actual piece of hardware. So for our macro button, we went 1, 2 over, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. So I just do the same thing on my sheet: 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so this button should be 19. So instead of 38, we're going to use 19. Now, to tell it which color you want, in my case, I believe it's 1, 3, or 5. 5 being yellow, 3 being red, and 1 being green. Again, it'll be different for your board. Check your manual. So when, hopefully everything working right, with this being the way it is, when I push the button initially, the button should turn green. And what I want to do is I'm going to take the same amount of code, or same code, and I'm going to keep everything the same, except I'm going to change it to 3, in which case it'll turn red. So I'm going to test that right now, really, really, really quick. And yes, it does work. And I will cut back to show you right now. So with that code in, you can see right there, it's already green because I was pushing it before. And off, red. So it's on, off, muted, not muted, muted, not muted. There we go. So it's a nice, simple way. And it's, again, this is why I don't use the MIDI mapping function for these particular buttons through Voicemeeter, because there's no option to send color change information. And if I only had 5 or 6 buttons, it wouldn't be a big deal. But because there are so many on this board, now, even though I'm not going to be using them all, if you pick up a board that has, maybe 10, maybe you want some sort of indication as to the state of what you have mapped. It might not matter if you're playing a sound effect, because you click it, it plays. It doesn't really matter. But if it's something where you say you're streaming on Twitch and you want to cut your mic audio to your Discord channel, whatnot, you want to be able to just glance over real quick and see that if it's red, that means none of my microphone audio is being sent to my Discord channel, and if it's green, that it is. At least that's the way I like to have it set up. Your mileage may vary. Okay, now let's check out another cool function, fading. Fading in and out channels. I'm just going to minimize this real quick and bring that down. So, for example, I have my this button up here, this fades from, so if I'm playing music and I'm going into an application to show some development work, I want to fade out my music and I want to fade in the development program because it has its own background music and audio. Now take a look at these two channels here. Right now they our Spotify is at -26 and Unity, for example, is at -39. If I click on this button here, actually I'll just use my hardware on my MIDI controller there. You see the one fades out and the other one fades in, and if I hit it again, they go back, and if I hit it again, they go back. Actually, well, the one is muted, so let's get rid of that. So this is nice if you want to fade music between two applications and whatnot, or for example, if you want to fade out of everything. Now, I'm not going to click the button here, but I will show everyone the code. So it's nice and simple. So if we want to, so if you want to fade out, you can literally set all of your channels to just fade straight out. Or you can whatever select ones you wanted, everything else to fade out and leave one playing, for example, music, whatnot. But the fading in and out between the two channels, it's again, very simple. So strip 1, which is our, in my case, my music channel, and strip 2 is my Unity channel or my game development channel, or sorry, audio channel. And so all I'm doing is to fade in the music. I'm calling strip 1.fade2, and then I'm having it equal, and then the next two parts are fairly straightforward. The first value, in this case -35, is the volume range. And the second is the time in milliseconds that you want it to fade to this value. So in this particular case, my Spotify channel is fading to -35 decibels, volume, what is it? It doesn't matter, in 2 seconds. And as that's happening, my game development channel, my Unity application, is fading out to -60 or all the way to the bottom in 2 seconds. So, and then actually, and this is also the color, this is the color code for sending it to my, my controller. So this is the initial state. So when my macro program opens, this code gets called, and when I push the button, my Spotify music gets faded out in this code, and my game development application gets faded in, and then when I push the button again, it goes the opposite. So it's, again, a nice little way of manipulating things on the fly, so you don't have to sit there with your mouse or click multiple hotkeys to fade in and out music. Another thing that I will show right now is how I play sound effects. So I'm going to get rid of this one, and I have a sound effect. I'll just play it right now. It might be obnoxious, so forgive me. It's just a little alarm. Oh, that's awful. Oh. So it's this button right here. And it looks like it's a lot, but it's not. It's just because of my where I have the actual sound effect located. So all you have to do for this one is you're calling on something called the recorder. And now, I mean, it's nice. I mean, it looks like a giant tape recorder, whatnot. But basically what you're doing is you're loading in a sound effect into this recorder, and you're telling it what volume you want it to play at, and then you're telling it to play. And then that's it. You can set it to loop if you want. I don't, because I don't really know of any sound effects you'd want looping. In any case, again, mileage may vary. So all you need to do is type in recorder.load and then equals, and in quotations, you want a path to the actual sound effect itself. In my case, it's through all of this junk. It's on my other hard drive through there, and you will need to call the actual extension. So in my case, it's a .wav file. And then after you set it, that gets loaded into here. And I'm not sure if you can read it, but it is saying it's there. Recorder.Gain, you're basically telling not any channel, but what the recorder itself will play, like what volume it will play the sound effect at. So again, recorder.Gain equals, in my case, I have it at -30. And then you want to tell it to play. So if you don't actually add this line, it'll just be sitting there and waiting. So I'm gonna hit OK, and I'll play it one more time just to annoy everyone. Oh, that's horrible. But again, to note, actually, I'll open it back up. I have it on a push button. I don't have it on 2 positions because there's no point. There's nothing. Now, unless you want to have it play, and then when you hit the button again, it stops playing if you want to send it through a loop or whatnot. But that's, again, it's up to you. Now, application-wise, I have, in my case, Photoshop. And this is really, really simple. All you're doing is you're calling system.execute, and again, in quotations, and you just give it the path. Give it the path that you want your program to, give it the path where your program exists. And you can leave the second two parts here. They're argument, they're what's called argument spots. But if you're just opening an application, you just leave blank quotations, or just quotations with nothing inside of them, and click on the button, and then boom, it opens it up. It's nice and simple. If you want to open up stuff on the fly, I just have this as a test button because I'm still setting everything up the way I want it. I might not even use it. I just wanted to see if I could get it done. And again, I have this as a push button because there's no point in having an off state. I think that's it. Actually, the other one I'll show is how I set up my board. So when I first open up, or when my macro buttons first opens up, or it'll automatically turn the button red. And there's a lot in here. The nice thing about the dialog box here is that you can have, I don't know how many lines you're allowed to have, but I mean, you can have a ton in there. And all I have this right now set at is I just basically go through each channel. Actually, I even go through my buses, so these ones as well. But I always leave these at 0 for when I'm doing streaming and whatnot. But I just tell each channel what I want it to fade to. So my microphone gets faded to 0, my Spotify gets faded to -35, and all my other channels for the initial the initial get-go just get set to 0. Oh, maybe I have 5. What do I have? I have 5 at 0 for some reason. I don't know. And I just have it do it in a half a second or 500 milliseconds. So this way, if for whatever reason you start pressing buttons and you mix everything up, or sorry, not buttons, you start manipulating your faders and you kind of mess up your audio balance. I just have a button where I just click it and then it just sets everything back to what I believe my default should be. And again, there's my color that's on. You can tell 01 is green for me, and then this one, if I press it again, it just turns it off. Now, one other really cool thing that you can do with this is those macro buttons there, you can actually set it to initiate global hotkeys that tell different applications what to do. So I have my one of my stream scenes set up here, and what I can do is I can actually set up my controller here to switch scenes. So there's my starting screen. There's my chatting. Oh, that's an ugly one. That's my game dev scene. That's my be right back. And that's my stream ending. So it's really, really cool. And I'll go into that really, really quick, and I'll show you how I set that up. See, all you have to do in OBS is open up your settings screen, and I'll drag it over the window here. And through here, you just click over to your hotkeys, and you can actually set your different individual scenes to be able to switch using a global hotkey. So for example, my be right back screen is I hit Shift F11 and it goes to that scene. I'll use Shift F7 to go to my development or my main working scene. Stream ending, Shift F12, start streaming, Shift F8, blah, 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 blah. So one thing you don't see here in my macros is if I go all the way down, I have my bloody cameras. There we go. If you go all the way down, because I have 8 rows on my MIDI controller, I go down 8 rows because I wanted it really close to where my hands are. So in each of these buttons, I actually call this global hotkey to make OBS switch to scenes. So if I'm going to open up my stream starting, and I'm going to move that. We'll leave it right there. You can see. So the nice thing about Voicemeeter is the macro program is that you can actually tell it to send, like I said, global hotkey. So it's really, really simple. You type system.keyDown, and then a bracket, and then in quotations, you want the actual hotkey. So because I set it in OBS, so this is my stream starting. So down here is Shift F8. I literally write Shift plus F8 and put the quotation in and close it off. And this is the button color. So because that's key down, if you don't write the next part in the off position, key up, your Windows will think that Shift key or Shift plus F8 is still down. So this is a big thing to note, that if you're using hotkeys, you need on the button down, you need to tell it what key combination you're using, and then when you release it, you need to also send the code key up. So this way, you're not running into issues with Windows thinking that you're still technically holding down those two keys. So, and the rest of it here is just the color codes I'm sending to the other buttons to know which scene I'm in. So again, key down on button down, key up on button up, and I set it to a push button, not two positions, because there's no point. I'm just clicking it once, and I want one thing to happen. So that's a really, really nice thing. This way I don't have to actually pan over to OBS, check out my scenes, click on the button, or remember keyboard hotkeys. I can just hit a button and boom, it goes to the next scene. Now, again, I know it's not a flashy GoXLR or a beautiful looking Stream Deck, but functionally, this does everything that I need it to do. I'm constantly looking for new ways of implementing functions on this to make my life a bit easier and make my stream or even my game development run a bit more efficiently. So if this is something that you think you could use, fantastic. I'm glad that any of my insights could actually help you. But if not, I completely understand. Sometimes you just want something that's ready-made, ready to go. But I'm a tinkerer. I love code, and I love trying to make things work in just funny new ways. So hopefully you found a bit of value to this, because I will definitely be doing a lot more of these. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. If you like what you saw, hit the like button. And if you want to see more of these in the future, hit the big old subscribe button, and I'd be very, very thankful. You can see me streaming and actually using this device on Twitch Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. I believe Tuesday and Sunday I'm on at 8:30 GMT 0. And Sunday I start at 9:30, a bit later. But if you want to see this in use, that's the place to do it. And hopefully I will see you there. So thanks again.